Welcome councillors, officers and members of the public to the meeting of the council. Reminder, please switch your mobile phones to silent. There are members of the public and press attending this meeting virtually. Can I ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting? The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. Reminder for councillors, to ensure those attending virtually can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you wait for the microphone and speak clearly into the microphone. Please remember it is a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors or officers by their first names. When addressing council, please stand if you are able to do so. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore upon hearing a constant two-tone alarm, please leave the building via your nearest marked fire exit and make your way down the stairs to the nearest assembly point, which is the Shortstay car park. Lifts are not to be used. Please do not take time to pick up personal belongings and leave the building properly. Please,
Thank you, Chair. Received apologies for absence from councillors Davies, Trinos, Spear, Warden, Turton, Whitehead and Peter Lever. Councillor Knewton will be joining the meeting virtually, however she will not be able to take part in voting. Thank you, Chair.
Item 2, business brought forward by or with consent of the Chair is just one this evening. Please can I remind all councillors that you need to do your box fish training so that the councillors can beat the staff. Yes. Not literally, just make sure the councillors have done it before the staff have. Item 3, declaration of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Item 4, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There is no Part B. So we go on to Part A, Item 5, local government reorganisation, which is pages 9 to 22 of your agenda, and a report by Chairman Ross.
Right, good evening, members. I've just got some slides to go through very quickly. I'm not going to repeat everything that's in the report that's in front of you. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to read it. And that hopefully provides you with a good background to how we've arrived at the situation we are in the moment with the government reorganisation. But we'll touch on a bit of that as we go through this. Some of these slides you'll recognise from the briefings that we've had, but just by way of background, you'll be aware that government have asked us to come up with proposals based on the district council boundaries, and these are the current district council boundaries with the population levels specified on the slide. I appreciate that once I move through this you will lose that information, but hopefully you'll be familiar with it from the slides that were sent out previously. But you're seeing North Devon around 99,000 population, going up to Plymouth with 265 roughly. The other slide that I've shown you before is the travel to work area. This identifies the area where 75% of the residents live and work, and you'll see how extensive the travel to work area is for Exeter. That sort of represents quite a draw, if you like, towards Exeter from the surrounding populations. And you'll see Barnstables and Torridges specified on there as well. Population density. I've shown you this before. The brighter the red colour is, the higher the density. And you'll see from this slide that the population of Devon is pretty much concentrated in the south of the area. And that's reflected in those population levels I showed you just now. With a great swathe of Devon in the middle, having very low population density until you come up to North Devon around Barnstable, Bideford, etc., where it gets a little bit higher. But the bulk of the population is in the Exeter, Torbay, Plymouth, East Devon area. And the other slide that I've shown you before is the areas of deprivation. And the brighter the blue, the more deprived the area. And again, I've shown you this before to highlight the fact that in the south of the county, although there are pockets of deprivation around Plymouth, Torbay, etc., the majority of the wider deprivation is to the north and central Devon, especially around that rural hinterland in the middle of the county. So where are we at the moment? The letter that kicked this off came from government at the beginning of February, and that constitutes a statutory invitation to local authorities to draw up proposals for local government reorganisation. And the letter also specified that they wanted those proposals by the 28th of November. The letter was slightly muddied, if you like. The waters were slightly muddied by that letter because it also said we want to see interim proposals by the 21st of March, which is why we're here tonight. The letter set out some criteria on which you should base proposals, and these are set out within the report and on the slide. So it talked about basing them around sensible economic areas. It suggested looking at appropriate tax bases, so that one, if you're coming up with a multi-unitary model, that one unitary didn't have a massive advantage over another area. It talked about using sensible geographies to help increase housing supply, because that's one of the criteria that the government are looking at. It's one of the objectives, as we know, is to increase housing supply with the 1.5 million target per year. It also said that drawing up the proposals, you would need to provide evidence of cost savings that would be generated from this, or efficiencies that would be generated from the change. And the most highly publicised of those criteria, I guess, is around the population level. And the letter indicated that a guiding principle was that population should be over 500,000. That has changed over time. Although the formal criteria still is guiding principle 500,000 population, comments made by ministers and secretaries of state, etc., more recently have indicated that there might be some movement on that. And in particular, I think last week at conference, the minister specified that the 500,000 in his view would be an average across the country, indicating that some would be higher, some would be lower. So there possibly is some room for movement on that. As I mentioned just now, it's also specifies about efficiencies. The whole idea behind local government reorganisation is that efficiencies are created through removing the two-tier system of local government. And so government are asking people to identify in their proposals what those efficiencies would be. It also talks about recognising local identity and the cultural and historic importance of specific areas of the county, and basing the proposals around that. The other criteria is around sensible population size ratios, and what that refers to is the ratio between the unitary authority that you create and the strategic authority that at some stage in the future might be created above it. For instance, if Devon, Torbay, Plymouth were able to create a strategic authority of themselves, then a single unitary covering the rest of Devon other than Plymouth probably wouldn't be a sensible size ratio when you looked at the overall population of the strategic authority. And the last criteria really is about district boundaries to be used as building blocks. But again, government has said in the letter that there may be exceptions to that where a case can be raised to change those boundaries. Other guidance that we've received through webinars, through meetings with MHC objects, etc., set out there. They said that the expectation is that all councils in an area will work together to develop unitary proposals that are in the interest of the whole area. So they're not really looking for final proposals coming through which just relate to one particular area. So any proposal that we come up with has to cover the whole of Devon area. They don't want competing proposals in November, but they have indicated that they fully expect lots of options coming forward as part of this informal 21st of March deadline. They have said that they want the transition to be as swift as possible, but I'll come on to the timeline in a minute. And they've also said that support will be provided by the government to facilitate change, including the postponement of elections where that is required. But you'll see from the timeline in a minute that that may be necessary if that timeline is to be reached. And the last point there is about the social care costs. That's a real concern to government, and a lot of the guidance and the conversations that we've had with government make clear that that's almost in their minds, is the increase in SEND costs, the increase in social care costs. So how have we got to the position we are at the moment? I made a point on their guidance on the interim proposals has changed. When the letter came out on the 5th of February, everybody, the whole sector took the view that government were asking for quite detailed proposals to come forward on the 21st of March. They have changed that. They rode back on that as time has gone on. And in fact, we received a letter last week, it was, from government clarifying what they actually want. And what they've said is it's really just touching base with local authorities at this stage, just to see what the current thinking is. So they're not looking for massively detailed proposals at this stage. And in fact, I think last week at conference, the minister said it's just a temperature check, just to see how local government feel about local government regionalisation. So they're not looking for detailed proposals. They are looking for some indication based on those criteria that we just went through, but they fully accept that some areas would be more advanced than others, and no area would be penalised by putting in a proposal that doesn't have a huge amount of detail in it at this stage. Don't forget, the 21st of March, this interim stage, is not part of the legal process. The legal process was kicked off by the letter on the 5th of February. That's the statutory invitation, and that says we want full proposals by the 28th of November. So we've had workshops with members, and we asked members what particular red lines there were, and we talked about our preference being to be included within the unitary with Torres District Council, and that was primarily around the strategic tie-ins that we've got with that authority. So we've got a joint plan, joint economic strategy, joint cultural strategy, and it would make sense to continue that arrangement. And of course, as we know, the border, if you like, between Torres and North Devon is pretty much just a line on the map. Most people regard themselves as living within the Northern Devon or North Devon area. We also talked about Exeter and its role as an economic driver, and the fact that if you're in the unitary with Exeter, for instance, and that big economic driver down south, that may well make the new authority, more sustainable, but could also act as a draw for investment. And tentative support was given for the 145 model, but there was an appreciation that there was still a huge amount of work to do, that there was evidence needed, etc. So the local position, as of this evening, is that Plymouth, they published their proposals last week. Sorry, there's a typo. There should be 13 parishes. So they're proposing to extend their boundaries and take in 13 parishes from the South Hams area. But they have provided no detail on what's to happen with the rest of Devon. They left the door open as far as that's concerned. Exeter, they published their proposals day before yesterday, I think it was, and they're proposing to extend Exeter as they flagged up earlier in the process. But unfortunately, no map has yet been drawn up or released, and no detail has been provided on, again, what's to happen with the rest of Devon. Although there's no map that's been published, their proposal indicates that they wish to extend their population or increase their population to between 300 and 350,000. And they're currently on 130, I think it is. Yeah, 130,000. So you can see the rural area around Exeter to get that increase in population of 170 odd thousand people is going to be quite an extensive area, probably. Devon County Council have published their proposals, and they're looking at 5 options. I haven't mapped it, these unfortunately I haven't had time for that, but they're looking at 5 options. They're not specifying which is their preferred option at the moment, but one of them does include the 145 proposal that districts seem to be supporting at the moment as an interim proposal. So in relation to the districts, most of them have now met. Some of them aren't meeting because leaders have delegated authority to move ahead. But those that have met, I think we're the last, alongside East Devon, also meeting tonight. Torridge met on Monday evening and supported the 145 model, but acknowledged that it could change as we move through the process until November as more work is done. But all of the districts, other than Exeter, are starting to look at that 145 model and support that to one extent or another. And the 145 model, to remind members, the 1 is obviously Plymouth, with its population of 260, 270. Then you've got the 4, which is Torbay, Teambridge, South Hams, West Devon, with a population of 270. Population of 419 or 420, call it that. And then you've got the 5, which is Torridge, North Devon, Mid Devon, East Devon, and Exeter, with a population of 532. And then just some notes on that, which you've seen before. In terms of the population criteria, that 500,000, it's obviously met in the 5 in that model, but not in the 1, the Plymouth, or in the 4. But outside of that, the population spread is fairly even between the 2 main proposed authorities, the 4 and the 5. The 4 is a cluster around Plymouth, linked by Dartmoor, quite a strong local identity there. But with the 5, it's more linear in nature, and probably little relationship between, say, Heartland and Axminster at the extremes. But Torridge and North Devon do sit together in the 5, and so in terms of the Northern Devon identity, that's reflected there. What hasn't yet been discussed is how services will be delivered, and I think moving ahead with any option, whatever the option is, that's one of the most important things to think about, is how services will be delivered to the public, and in particular whether any local offices will be maintained, etc. And one of the things that came up at the conference last week, as I understand it, was this need that if you are looking at a bigger unitary, then you need to build that into the constitution pretty much straight away, because otherwise, as things develop over time, that might disappear as savings have been made, etc. So if that's one of the criteria that we want to look at, then that's something that should be built in fairly early doors, really. In terms of next steps, interim proposals have to be submitted by Friday. And then following that, the detailed project plan needs to be drawn up to take us through to November. Now, if members are moving forward with 145, then that's collectively, obviously, with all the other Devon districts. If there's another option that comes up, then if that's being, for the sake of argument, being proposed by North Devon Council and not supported by the other councils, then that's something that we would have to take on board. With the 145, the project plan that's being drafted up at the moment shows engagement with the public from May, or the full engagement anyway, the consultation from May, but with some touching base with the public and other partners prior to that. But the full engagement starts from May. But also next steps is evidence gathering, really, at the county level, and that's probably the most critical bit of evidence that everybody is waiting to see. How much do the county services cost? How are they disaggregated across the county? Where is the demand for county services, etc.? That's not going to be available probably until the end of March. And that's the evidence that we really need to start plugging into any models that come forward, alongside all the other evidence that we might look at and the information from the public and the views from the public. And that's put up there about councillor briefings and workshops throughout, because don't forget, like I said, this is not part of the statutory process. This is just really, the start of the process for us. And we need to make sure that members, you guys, are kept on board and up to date with what's going on. So we'll need to ensure that there are regular briefings for them, there's workshops, etc., and look at how we're going to deliver those throughout. The timetable, indicative at the moment, I would say, but draft proposals, like I said, 21st of March. What should follow then are informal discussions with MHCLG, but what form that will take, we don't know yet. We don't know yet whether we're going to get a clear steer from government as to whether the model is acceptable or not. I suspect that we won't, because, like I said, this is not part of the statutory process. So any council can come up with proposals and submit them on the 28th of November. But I'm hoping that some useful discussions will take place, which give us an indication of current government thinking. Full proposals by the 28th of November. And then decisions are expected in June or August next year. And at that stage, we'll know whether the government are moving ahead with any proposals, and if so, which proposals or which proposal they're moving ahead with. And if they do move ahead with a proposal in Devon, at the moment, the plan is to stand up that new authority in April 28. So there may be a need to postpone elections if that's the case. I'll just touch on costs, because I think the report indicated in the resources column, I can't remember what figure I put in there now, I think it's about 100 to 150,000. What's clear from the proposals that have so far been published is that other authorities are expecting that figure to be much higher. So the costs that the government are looking to get an indication on include costs for consultants, external help, but also the internal costs the district council or the county council will incur. And Exeter, for instance, are looking at a figure of a maximum of 500,000, Plymouth the same, and the thought around the 145 model is probably looking at between 250 to 350,000. So quite significant costs in bringing forward. Government has talked about helping with those costs, but what help that will be remains to be seen. And I suspect that it might just be the preferred option come 28th of November that gets some assistance rather than a whole range of options moving forward. So it's costs that will be borne by the authorities involved. So that's where we are, members. There is a recommendation, which you won't be able to read because I've only put it in on 12, I think. But it is on your desk. It's been reproduced for you on the desks. And that recommendation in summary talks about acknowledging that this is a process that we have to go through, acknowledging that the 21st of March is something that the government have set out for us. And so therefore we are needed to come up with some interim proposals. But also recognising that there's a huge amount of work to do still before you can firmly say that one proposal is the best proposal over anything else. But indicating that because there is this coalescence around the 145 model, recognising that that's the model that has had most focus at this particular stage, but also saying that much more work has to be done around evidence gathering, and also making sure that the model going forward reflects, as I said there, the different cultures, economies and communities across the rural areas and urban areas, and also recognising the distinctiveness of Northern Devon. And on the back of that, it's suggesting that full council agree to the submission of the initial proposal indicating the 145, but also giving me delegated power to submit something to government that we still have a lot of work to do. We want something that reflects that rural distinctiveness of Northern Devon, and also noting that further proposals will be brought to you guys at full council as we go through until the 20th of November. Happy to take questions, but
Councillor Cram.
Not a question. Chair, my colleagues have just pointed out to me that standard this one, do we? Yes. My colleagues have just pointed out to me that there was a stunned silence at the end of that, and I think we're probably all in the same boat. And the fact that nobody in this room, including chief exec has a clue what's going on. You know, I mean, it really is at that level, isn't it? I mean, this is stick your finger in a pie. It's the best we can do. It's probably one of the wishiest, washiest motions that's gone through the council, but there's nothing else you can do. That's all the data you've got. It's a nonsense, isn't it? Not your fault, not anybody in this room's fault, but we're being thrown into this. The reason the county have produced a document they've got, which is no better, is it actually says in there, we haven't got a clue. I think it's in one of the paragraphs. They probably say it a bit nicer.
Yeah,
but that's
different than that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the gist of what it says. A, we haven't got a clue. B, it's not us. Let the next lot do it. And that's like paragraph 1. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I take it David's going to propose this. I mean, I'll happily support it, whatever, but I haven't got any questions. Tell me on the 28th of November. I'll ask them then.
All right. Well, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity before the 28th of November to ask questions, to further reports, and we go through those briefings, etc. But you're absolutely right. You know, I don't think anybody at this stage can stand up in front of their council and say this is the model that should go forward, because we haven't examined the evidence. There's still a huge amount of work to do, and frankly, we don't know what's going to happen with Exeter and with Plymouth, because if those boundaries change, then the concept of using district boundaries as building blocks has gone out the window. And so, that would then be in the end. So you're absolutely right. There's a huge amount of work to do between now and November.
Councillor Milton.
I think the resolution we see in front of us at least gives the options that were there. And I think what's important really is we've got to leave everything open. I mean, it feels like we're in the new Trumpian style of policy making and negotiation. Let's pull together a proposal. You work with a few people, the rest don't agree. Some might agree. You don't know what the thoughts of everyone else is. And with a bit of luck, at the end of it, they might agree with some of what you've done or not. It's kind of, as Councillor Crabb said, we're a heck of a long way here from any form of continuity that means something. So I think I will support the resolution that's there on that basis, that it gives the opportunity, because I don't know whether, without any of the figures available at the moment, to be able to realistically determine that value of the groupings, it's near impossible to make a definite decision. And I think we're going to have to use the time available really well. If we don't, we're going to find ourselves out on a limb. Because there is a danger, of course, by supporting a single option when it's been made quite clear that one of those parties to that 145 option at the moment is really not that interested in it. The second one is kind of looking at it. The second major population centre also appears to be looking at it and thinking, maybe not. So we're going to have to be in a position to come up with something that will be suitable should that look like a favourite direction of travel by government. And that is quite possible at the moment.
Councillor Clayton.
Do you mind if I come up there? Basically. Is that all right? Is that all right, James?
Yes. Super.
Before I actually start, there is an announcement I want to make, and that's happy birthday to Councillor Louisa York. Happy birthday, and thank you for coming on your birthday to this very important meeting tonight. So, happy birthday! I'm sure I'm speaking for you. And thank you, Ken, for that very thorough introduction to everything, which covered, I think, everything actually I was going to say. So thanks for that, Ken. Madam Chair, in proposing this, I think it's actually worthwhile, although Ken has briefly touched on this, just reflecting back on how we got to the position that we're actually in now. After the government introduced its plans for devolution, they invited councils to submit proposals for unitary status. Let's just remember that we are going to have unitary status. These district councils will go. The invited councils to submit proposals The leader of Devon County Council straight away proposed one unitary for the whole of Devon. Now, he wants to be for the whole of Devon, and he's since retracted that, but it did spur the district councils into action. And that is part of the reason why you then get collective action to come up with what we now call the 145 model. Because if it was just one Devon unitary, that's over 1 million residents, and that's just, it goes against everything that devolution should be about, in my opinion. Here in North Devon, as you know, we set up a working group, and I think we're the only district council that actually set such an apparatus up to give as many members through their leaders say on what was going on. And it is difficult. I take in what Councillor Milton said, and a lot of this is to do with the government speed, the timetable, and it's been very difficult. Of course, we then haven't got figures from Devon County to be able to come up with something that's tangible and we can say with any credibility that's the main one that we should go for. So we've had to stumble around in the dark as far as the figures are concerned. But what the government did want is unity of purpose, and I think we've got that amongst certainly 7 of the districts. So we had this group, 2 from each political group, and we met. In the first meeting, I asked for what were our red lines, and our red lines were we stay with Torwich for historical, cultural, and economic reasons, really. And we've managed to do that with the 145, and also that we have some kind of economic driver. Plymouth was basically ruled out because of all kinds of reasons, primarily because of the lack of connection with North Devon, and so that would rule in Exeter, hence the 145. And I personally still think that's important. I know others disagree with that, but I think it is important to have that economic driver, which is Exeter. On the basis of that, I then met with other district leaders. We came up with a 145, and at the last meeting of the subgroup, when we came up with the 155, I actually said to the 6 there, are you happy with me going along with this? And everybody said, with reservations, yes, they were happy. Hence, that's why the 7 districts announced that's what the line that they were going to pursue. There's recognition that it's not perfect. I don't think any model would be perfect, to be perfectly honest. There's going to be problems with all of them. But I think 145 does cover a whole multitude of factors that the government was looking for. There's no doubt that the government's looking for a model that commands unity. And as far as I can see, 145 is getting there. It's got support for 7 districts. The county council, one of their, I think, 5 proposals, it might be narrowed down to 3, is the 145. Plymouth obviously is a variation because they're the 1. So we don't know the exact referencing that Plymouth is coming up with, but it will take some of South Hants into consideration there. But it's essentially going to be 1 and then probably the 4-5. This is where after the interim goes in 21st of March, again, it's quite right. We need to get together with the other authorities and at least explore where we are and see if we can again come up with a more united stance for government for February. Having said all that, I'm aware that 145, like all the other models, has not been thoroughly tested because of the lack of data. So that's something we've got to come back to. If we look at the actual recommendation, if you can just all have a quick look at that, the 3rd bullet point, the very end of the last sentence, it says North Devon Council will continue to examine all options before reaching any firm conclusions. So I hope that that line will take into issues like Councillor Milton has said, in particular options that reflect the different cultures, economies and communities across rural and urban areas. But also, if we can just talk through in a very boring way, the very last, there's the penultimate point, bullet point. On that basis, Council agrees to the signing of a joint letter. This is what we're going to be doing. And the submission of an interim proposal, along with other district councils indicating support for the 145 model. But the chief exec is also delegated power to submit to government the above views on the need to explore alternative options. I think that's the key thing you've got to understand that we're voting for tonight. And it is interim, but it is supporting the 145, but it's saying the door's not shut on other proposals. Having said that, I think Ken did allude to this. If we put forward other proposals, and no other councils do, and we want to explore those further, you've got to be aware, members, that that's going to be costly. I mean, I can't understand that it would cost £250,000 per proposal, but that's what's being said, at least 150. So if you're going to come up with a proposal that doesn't command support from any other area, any other council, it's up to you members to say how you're going to fund that. Because we're not going to get the money from government. It's been alluded to, but it's not been promised. And if we know what the promises were with compensation for national insurance, it's partial. So bear that in mind when we start to think about, after the 21st, other actual options you might think about. What are you going to cut in our budget to support those other proposals that you're going to put forward? And it would just be proposals. The government will then turn around and say, possibly, no, we're not interested in that, and we'll spend the money. Whereas the 145, the money can be split in investigating and getting consultants, if that's what we're going to go down, to collate the data. The money will be split not just on one council, it'll be split amongst at least 7. So please bear that in mind when you do vote tonight, or certainly consider in the future after the 21st. But this is just an interim. That's all we're voting for. We're not voting for the specific option tonight to say that is definitely going to be the case. Government's going to decide this, and it could be completely different at the end of the day. This is just getting a feeling. Ken referred to the government wants us to take the temperature of what people are feeling, and that's all it is. The big work will come after the 21st of March, when we have to really solidify a proposal for November, hopefully along with many of the councils as well. So I hope that's given some kind of rationale behind where we are and what's going on. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm more inclined to let people, offer their own voices on what they want to see going on now. But okay. So I'll sit back now, and if anybody does want to ask questions, then they can. Councillor Milton, sorry. Was this to me, or is a general point?
How is it really that simple to be able to vote on a preference at the moment, when in my mind I have absolutely no idea whatsoever what the economic situation will be, because we haven't been given any details. And until we get those details, it's near impossible for me to say that I actually prefer any one over the other. Yes, maybe I could say I prefer negotiating with that group of people because they feel more comfortable to negotiate with. But actually, where's the data to prove that most definitively, by linking with Exeter, we would economically be better off in North Devon? Because I haven't seen it yet.
No,
and I don't suppose anybody has. So that's my question to you. At what point do we get this, and how does that link with what we actually decide tonight?
I think Ken said that the data will hopefully start going through thick and fast after the 21st of March. There's been, some might say it was deliberate, not giving us as much data as we wanted to. That's more of contention. But the data will start coming in. Why should you be voting for the 145? I think it comes down to the feeling of unity, at least among 7 district councils, possibly Devon in the end as well, possibly Torbay. That's certainly the leader of Torbay's intention to support 145, but they're also putting forward a couple of other proposals. So because of that, you're going to have that unity. It might prove with the data unworkable, possibly. But at least we're showing that there is some kind of unity there for government to look at. That's all I can say to you at the moment. Things might change. And we're not saying 145 shut the door. We're saying 145 is a preferred option, but we're going to investigate others as well, possibly, depending on the data as well. But I think 145 will probably stand up to be honest, because the Pixel report did say that was viable, but I agree we need more data. But we are working to these government deadlines that have been set, and we haven't set those deadlines. It's been a real rush all of February, and we've done the best we can do on that. So,
Councillor Prowse next.
Joe, I was going to second the motion.
Councillor Prowse is second. I just wondering how we went on a minute.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Just to me.
Say,
Microphone, please.
I just wanted to say that I was echoing what Councillor Milton was saying. Given that all the indications are that Exeter may not join in or want to be part of this, we really need to keep our options open, and I'm just not convinced about being too hard and fast about a 145 model. It's too early and we don't have enough information, and Exeter don't look like they're too keen on it either. So that's my point.
Councillor Bushell.
Yeah, I agree largely with my colleagues, Councillor Menton and Councillor Wilson. The one thing I will say, Councillor Clayton, I did feel that you were rather backtracking towards the end, and we've been elected to fight for the people of North Devon. So if we need to do a costly report in order to get them best represented with whichever solution we're going to go with, we are duty bound to do that. As district councillors, we may not be carrying on. We know we're not carrying on, but we do need to represent the people as best we can. And if that involves spending an amount of money to get data, to get reports, I feel that we're going to need to make the tough decisions in order to fund that.
Yeah, Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. I certainly wasn't backtracking. I was just pointing out that the 145 has demand support from 7 other districts, and the Torbay as well. So the cost that's going to be involved in getting the data for that using consultants will be spread. If there's a proposal to come up with something different that you might say serves North Devon in your own particular way, it hasn't got the support from any other council, then it will be North Devon who will be having to find the finances. And all I was saying is, I certainly won't be supporting that if we're on our own. And if you want to say which part of the budget you would cut as an independent member for South Bolton, then yeah, then come up with those proposals. There's no rush to do that tonight, obviously. But that's what we're going to have to do, because the budget next year is going to be very tight, and I certainly don't want to be spending it on consultants when we're the only council that's going to put forward that the government will then say, well, it's got no support for that. But what's the point? You've wasted your money. And I think the constituency you refer to in North Devon will look at us and say, that's a terrible decision. Why on earth have you spent all that money to then be turned down by government because we haven't got the support from anywhere else in Devon? That's a simple fact.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I think I go back to, how have we got to where we are currently, and government has been extremely clear. Government has been extremely clear that they are going to go down the route of getting rid of 2-tier local authorities, and they will be moving to unitary. And actually, probably not many of us in this room would choose that if we had a choice, but we don't have a choice. And so it seems to me that what we need to do is to try and get the best for the people of North Devon that we possibly can out of what government is proposing. Now, in terms of what the letter from the minister says, and can I thank officers for making sure that that was attached to the report of this council, it is really clear that their starting point for population is about 500,000. And there may be some flexibility, and there are all sorts of areas of uncertainty in exactly how does that work. But the other thing that is really clear is that whatever shape unitary we end up with has to be sustainable on from an economic point of view. Now, you know, I think that this is a really well run district council. I think generally, I think district councils in Devon are well run. I think, we provide good services, that our section 151 officers, thank you very much, John, are sensible, good people who look to the future and advise us as best they can in the difficult world of local government finances. We all know that local government finances it is not a generous world in which we live, and we have to cut our cloth according to whatever it is one does that with. But, we none of us as local authorities are awash with money. So we all try to do the best that we possibly can. Now, if we look at what the government also says in terms of the criteria for a sustainable financial future for a unitary authority, that does mean that we have to have places within those authorities which actually bring money in, bring council tax in, bring business rates in. Much as I love Barnstaple, and I'm both at district and county, I represent bits of Barnstaple. We are not a main economic driver. It would seem to me to cut our noses off to spite our face if we decided that Exeter's too far away. Awful lot of people around here work in Exeter. So I think that the district councils together have worked really hard over the last however long with the limited data which has been available, and the 145 is the best model that they've been able to come up with, which appears to be in line with what government is setting out that it wants. And it is government that will make the decisions about what happens. It's not us, it's not county, it's not Torbay, it's not Plymouth, it is government up there in Westminster. And I have to say I agree with the leader, Councillor Clayton, that actually presenting a united front, when we get to the point of putting forward our detailed proposals, actually is going to serve us better than presenting ourselves as squabbling, as having, different proposals. I would suspect, looking at what government has said, that Exeter is going to find it really difficult to go on their own, because they're only, 130,000? That's a very long way off the 500,000 which they have set out, the government has set out that they want. I mean, I think the other aspect of it is that the government is also very clear that proposals have to work for the whole of the area in which is going to be turned into unitary. Now that means that whatever Exeter does has to work for us as well. I would question whether their sort of somewhat parochial view, can I say that? Yes, I can. Actually disadvantages places in the north of Devon because of the economic driver that city is. So I am very much in support of the 145, but I completely understand that actually the government has not given councillors or the members of the public an opportunity or time to really explore this in any detail, to explore what matters to us. So I will be in support of the motion of 145, but also with that flexibility to look at other things. I would like to propose another small amendment, if I may, which is in the middle of the third bullet point. If I just read this out for officers. So where it says, and it's an additional sentence, and it comes before the sentence that starts, however, council is also recommended to point out that. Have you got the right place? Yeah? Okay. And what I'd like to suggest is, this is talking about the 145, is that this option also currently appears to represent the closest fit to criteria as set out by government. Because it is government that's going to choose. So it is this option. I could even give this to you. This option also currently appears to represent the closest fit to criteria as set out by government. And we've got that. Yeah. So I'd like to propose that as an amendment.
Can I just bring Ken in before we go on to anybody else, please?
Thank you, Chair. The first point I made, without being too challenging, is how do you know that without looking at the data? Basically, I'm speaking as an officer, because as an officer, I can't stand before you at the moment and say one proposal is better than any of the others. And I know there are different views across the room, and I'm not supporting one view or the other, but at the moment, we cannot say that any particular model is the best without challenging the evidence and examining the evidence against that. 145 may well prove to be the best model, I don't know, but at the moment there's so much data that hasn't been fed into that model yet, it makes it quite difficult to say so. And that's what I was going to, the reason I was standing up really was to say that let's not get too polarised on which model is the best and which isn't. The motion at the moment refers to sort of staying in the room, if you like, with 145 team, because there are benefits in doing so, not least of which, as the leader said, there's the cost benefit in examining some of that evidence collectively. But the motion does also say that we will examine all of the other options and all of the evidence before reaching a firm conclusion, which will be between now and November. But at the moment, as I said, I wouldn't suggest we get too polarised views as to which is best. The 145 model, you're absolutely right. It is the one on which most focus is on at the moment in districts. But if, for instance, Plymouth are allowed to change their boundaries, then that 145 model starts to lose validity straight away. So we don't yet know which one is the best at the moment. We just need to examine that evidence.
Could we? I've got a lot of people who want to
second
see.
the motion.
Very quickly, please.
Okay, thank you. I hear what you say, Ken, which is why I have written my amendment is currently appears to represent. So it's not saying it does.
Okay, thank you. If I could go on to Councillor Crabb, please.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Appreciate it's a lot of folk, right? There we are. Sorry, that's that. Very, very quickly, the chief executive just picked up on the point. Right, if we're looking at 145 and we're focused too much on 145, it is alleged that Exeter have had a nod what they're doing. Plymouth very, very strident that what they're decided to do is they've been given the nod, will go ahead. Now, every councillor you speak to from Plymouth, I have not spoken to a great number, but the ones I have spoken to are all absolutely fixed that they're going to get what they want. And they're quite confident of that. So I think they've got back doors open and that sort of malarkey. So that happens. If you look at the presentation we had earlier on, the four has got no money anyway. It's a very poor area. So if you strip out half of Plymouth as well, it blows out one of the water. So I think the motion before us has been seconded. I appreciate we might have voted an amendment. Motion before us has been seconded. I'm happy to vote for that motion because it gives us flexibility to do anything we want in the future. There we are. That's
Thank you, Councillor Crabb. Have Councillor Beedman, please.
I think, can I second the motion?
Yeah,
I thought we
certainly.
agreed that I was going to second.
Yes.
Can I just sort of like? Is it working? I just think, you work hard and you try to include people in negotiations. This motion has taken a lot of get-together to actually unite two slightly opposite views, but from people that genuinely care about North Devon, and one side don't care about North Devon more than the other. It's not a matter of that, Chair. In May, I've been a councillor on this council for 46 years. I'd rather see the district stay. I realise that isn't going to happen.
And over the years, this process has divided and made enemies of friends in North Devon every time we've looked at local government review in the past. I mean, honestly, it ain't worth it, because we've got to find a way of working together on this. This motion allows both views to go forward at the moment. What Paul Crabb just said is part of the notes I've got here that I was going to say why I want to second this. And that's because I've read every last paragraph of Plymouth's bid and Exeter's bid. They're very, very professionally put together. And I, like Paul, think we've got to think about the politics of this, and that they may well have the ear of the Labour government. Now, if they have, we need to have some work or some work being done on another alternative to the 145. That's all this motion is saying. Nothing else. Leave the debate now, in my view, till later on in the year in November. Let's get on with the work now. We all want to see the best for North Devon. What worries me particularly is that the Devon County Council had the assurance when they were formed about the Civic Centre advancement and area working. And I remember back in my early days, in the late 70s, early 80s, that the Civic Centre was completely filled with county solicitors, county surveyors, county estates people that actually delivered services up here in the northern bit of Devon. It's all gone, even though that assurance was there in 1973. That sort of economic impact on Barnstable is something that I think is a worry for folk. So whatever happens, we've got to do that work during the next few months to make sure we protect the economy of North Devon, because we could lose a lot of the jobs from North Devon that are very, very valuable to our economy. But having said all that, I ain't going to go on about the other stuff. I understand why the 145 proposal came forward. It seemed a very simple process, but that as Councillor Crabb said, works really well as long as Exeter stay within their boundaries. They're obviously going to nibble out of 3 districts around them. So if that is the case, then well, we've got to think again. But there's also the other option that if government looked at Exeter and said Exeter and East Devon on its own, that also puts into focus what else happened to the rest of the boundaries. So Exeter is going to grow, I think, in my view. That'll be the outcome of this. It's a reality. You know, it is a fantastic forward-looking economic driver, and you ain't going to hold it back. So I would just want to urge colleagues to support this motion, because you're not compromising any of your principles if you want to go ahead with 145 or you want to see a different option. It allows both of those, but it allows us to go and do that bit of work that we need to do, and it gives the leader the confidence that he can sign that letter. So that unity is kept together. So, Chair, I would hope that colleagues would, and I put a lot of effort into keeping all my colleagues in my group informed as things go on. You wouldn't believe it, would you, when you hear something? And they all put thumbs up to me last night saying, "Yeah, that's fine, Mark. Well done. Yeah, proper job." Well, there we are. So this is the best we can do if we're going to stay united and look after the interests of North Devon. What we don't want to do is have a polarised debate over the next few weeks. Let's carry on working together and see in the end if we can get the best out of this for North Devon's economy.
Thank you, Councillor Prowse. With what Councillor Prowse has just said, does anybody else still want to speak? Councillor Jones. Sorry, Councillor Beaman. You were next.
No, I want to move. We move to the Bloom vote. I mean, let's face it. This is Labour government attacking rural communities again. No time. Just off the back of the fag paper stuff. Really, we are where we are. We're going to spend the next 7 or 8 months debating this, and with the quality of staff we've got in North Devon, I'm quite convinced that we will come up with what's best for North Devon people of Devon. Let's just get to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Beaman. Councillor Jones.
I'll be quick. I just want to commend our leader, Councillor Taser, Councillor Browse, and our Chief Executive, because I think we will be one of the only districts that, as well as supporting the popular option, we're also keeping our options open. And I think while we're keeping our options open, we can make sure that we can we can really focus on the most vulnerable in our community, those rural areas, our deprived urban areas. We can really make sure that we're doing what needs to be done to protect the jobs and keep our services. So yeah, a big thank you to those that have been working really hard over the last week to put forward something that we can all support. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bell, if we could keep this brief, it would be fantastic. Thank you.
I've been talking most of the day anyway, so I want to keep this brief. Points, thank you. I'm going to support 145 because that seems to work. That seems to be supported by 7 councils, fantastic. But I do want to get this done because we need to move on to, we don't, as everyone said, we don't know the shape of this unitary authority coming forward, but we do know that we have the opportunity to merge we're going to have an amalgamation of our housing services into whatever region, and we're going to have a splitting up of county-based things like social and education. This is a great chance to focus on those things that really matter. Let's get on with that. Let's move past this, support what we've got. And also, we're talking about an economic driver. We really need this at the time. We really need to focus. If we're going to be tied in with Exeter, whoopee. But we've got, people keep saying we're remote, we're a little bit of, I think people have even used the word backwater. I don't like it. Hinterland's probably better. But, we need to improve those connections. We need to get this railway line up and running. We need to be properly connected to the area.
Okay, Councillor Maddox, did you still want to speak?
So, is it working? Yeah.
Yes.
How can we make a decision with one choice when there's no data with that? It's most meetings that I've been to, we've had Ken sticking his neck out saying, that we need to look at least 2. And how can we make a decision with just one option that's got no data? For all of the independent councillors that have been talking tonight, and I don't understand, we've been working on this, has been brought forward now today. I thought this was agreed and to go through tonight, so that it gives us an option.
Councillor Maddox, it does give us the option to go.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But we
Which is
need
what?
amendment.
No, sorry, the amendment has been withdrawn.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, Councillor Leaf, if you'd like to explain why. Thank you. I've only, of course, just seen this recommendation, so I had failed to notice that somewhere in here it talks about, yes, further down in there, it talks about, where is it? Which is about unlucky. Okay, yes, we agree with there. Yeah, further on, so it says, however, council also recommended to point out that the lack of data and engagement means that this may well change as we go through the process. North Devon Council will continue to examine all options, so on and so forth. I think looking at this, it gives the sort of the impression that actually the discussions that have taken place so far, which have been in good place, have been trying to fit in with the criteria that government have given out. But that we don't have much data, and it's based on the little bits of data that we do have. So on that basis, I'm happy to withdraw that amendment. Thank you, Councillor Lieber. Now, if there's nobody else that wishes to speak, I would like these to be proposed. Sorry, Councillor Ricky Knight.
I did.
You said you didn't.
Sorry, I just would like to say something, and I'll make clear why. I appreciate that Councillor Beedman wants to move the vote, so do all of us, especially after this morning's meeting. And I would like to concur that our independent leader has been absolutely fantastic. He's represented us perfectly. He's failed to realise that we are independent, unwhipped, and we will carry on putting in our pennyworth in. Can I just make a couple of points, however? The bullet points 4 and 5 assuage all my concerns, all our concerns, to be honest. That's what we were looking for, and that's what we've got. So obviously I'll be supporting this. I'm very proud of the wording. To go back, however, to the idea that any alternative proposal is going to cost money, I can see that that's going to be inevitable. Because if Exeter do what people think they're going to do, and Plymouth obviously extends as well, then we're going to lose all our parameters of how we can become sustainable. I don't think any alternative proposal will be for North Devon. I can see that we will stick with Torridge, North Devon, Mid Devon, West Devon and Mid Devon. And if we were to ever propose something else, if our 145 falls, then I think we can work with those four districts successfully, and they can share the cost. That's what I would hope. So I'm not talking about a magic money tree because it doesn't exist and budget constraints are really a pain. Thank you for letting me speak, Chair. I'll shut up now.
Right, if everybody's happy, we have the proposal proposed by Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Prowse. Sorry, proposed by Councillor Clayton. Seconded by Councillor Prowse. I got a seconder, right? Yes, lovely. So if we could go to the vote, so all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Karen. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm just formally closed the meeting.